Chapter 92. Ambergris. Now this ambergris is a very curious substance, and so important as an article of commerce that in 1791 a certain Nantucket board Captain Coffin was examined at the bar of the English House of Commons on that subject. For at that time and indeed until a comparatively late day, the precise origin of ambergris remained, like amber itself, a problem to the learned. Though the word ambergris is but the French compound for grey amber, yet the two substances are quite distinct. For amber, though at times found on the sea-coast, is also dug up in some far inland soils, where ambergris is never found except upon the sea. Besides amber as a hard, transparent, brittle, odorless substance, used as mouthpieces to pipes for beads and ornaments, but ambergris is soft and waxy, and so highly fragrant and spicy that it is largely used in perfumery, in pastilles, precious candles, hair powders, and pomatum. The Turks use it in cooking and also carry it to Mecca, for the same purpose that frankincense is carried to St. Peter's in Rome. Some wine merchants drop a few grains into claret to flavor it. Who would think, then, that such fine ladies and gentlemen should regale themselves with an essence found in the inglorious bowels of a sick whale? Yet so it is. By some ambergris is supposed to be the cause, and by others the effect, of the dyspepsia in the whale. How to cure such a dyspepsia, if it were hard to say, unless by administering 3 or 4 boatloads of Brandreth's pills, and then running out of harm's way as laborers do in blasting rocks. I have forgotten to say that there were found in this ambergris certain hard, round, bony plates, which at first Stubb thought might be sailors' trouser buttons, but afterwards turned out that they were nothing more than pieces of small squid bones embalmed in that matter. Now, that the incorruption of this most fragrant ambergris should be found in the heart of such decay, is this nothing? Bethink ye of that saying of St. Paul in Corinthians about corruption and incorruption, how we are sown in dishonor but raised in glory. And likewise call to mind that saying of Paracelsus about what it is that maketh the best musk. Also forget not the strange fact that of all things of ill savour, cologne water, in its rudimental manufacturing stages, is the worst. I should like to conclude the chapter with the above appeal, but cannot, owing to my anxiety to repel a charge often made against whalemen, and which, in the estimation of some already biased minds, might be considered as indirectly substantiated by what has been said of the Frenchman's 2 whales. Elsewhere in this volume, the slanderous aspersion has been disproved, that the vocation of whaling is throughout a slatternly untidy business. But what is that other thing to rebut? They hint that all whales smell bad. Now, how did this odorous stigma originate? I opine that it is plainly traceable to the first arrival of Greenland whaling ships in London more than 2 centuries ago, because those whalemen did not then, and do not now, try out their oil at sea as the southern ships have always done, but cutting up the fresh blubber in small bits, thrust it through the bungholes of large casks, and carry it home in that manner. The shortness of the season in those icy seas, and the sudden and violent storms to which they are exposed, forbidding any other course. The consequence is, that upon breaking into the hold and unloading one of these whale cemeteries in the Greenland dock, a savour is given forth somewhat similar to that arising from excavating an old city graveyard for the foundations of a lying-in hospital. I partly surmise also that this wicked charge against whalers may be likewise impugned to the existence on the coast of Greenland in former times of a Dutch village called Schmerenberg or Smeerenberg, which latter name is the one used by the learned Fogo von Slack in his great work on Smells, a textbook on that subject. As its name imports smear fat berg, to build up, this village was founded in order to afford a place for the blubberers of the Dutch whale fleet to be tried out without being taken home to Holland for that purpose. It was a collection of furnaces, fat kilns, and oil sheds, and when the works were in full operation certainly gave forth no very pleasant savour. But all this was quite different with the southern sperm whaler, which in a voyage of 4 years perhaps, after completely filling her hold with oil, does not consume perhaps 50 days in the business of boiling out. And in the state of that it is cast, the oil is nearly scentless. The truth is that, living or dead, if but decently treated, whales as a species are by no means creatures of ill odor, nor can whalemen be recognized as the people of the Middle Ages affected to detect a Jew in the company by the nose. Nor indeed can the whale possibly be otherwise than fragrant when, as a general thing, he enjoys such high health, taking an abundance of exercise, always out of the doors, though it is true, seldom in the open air. I say that the motion of the sperm whale's flukes above the water dispenses a perfume when a musk-scented lady rustles her dress in a warm parlor. What then shall I liken the sperm whale to for fragrance, considering his magnitude? Must it not be to that of the famous elephant with jeweled tusks and redolent with myrrh, which was led out of an Indian town to do honor to Alexander the Great? So, this is chapter 92, and he mentions the ambergris, and he mentions, well, whales don't really smell that bad. But, that probably comes from the Greenland whalers who would come into port with a couple months worth of just kind of rotting meat, because that's what it's essentially rotting because he's sitting in the casks and bacteria gets in and works its action. But the whale oil itself doesn't smell. And he talks about rendering it out later, but essentially what it is you take the fat and you boil it down, and everything that's fat melts, and then everything that's not fat you skim off the top or pull off the bottom, and so you refine it by cooking it, essentially. And also, when you cook it, you get rid of all of the water. And water is what allows bacteria to grow. So if you don't have the water for the bacteria to grow, then it tends to stay fresh longer. Oil is one of those things that doesn't really go bad. Well, most oil doesn't go bad. It can go bad in certain instances, but that's usually due to oxidation. But fully saturated oils don't go bad, and whale oil is... Most oil from animals is fully saturated, and that what causes it to harden up. And anyway, it's a saturated fat, which means that it doesn't go that bad, and usually the only way it goes bad is by air, because the bacteria need water. There are very few things that can live in pure oil. So there are very few things that can live in pure oil, and because there are very few things that can live in pure oil, once you purify the oil by rendering it, it's all good. And he says that 4 years they spend about 50 days cooking out the whale, and that's coming up in a further chapter, not right away, but there's another chapter about that. But that is ambergris, and that's whales don't stink. Well, whales do stink. Yeah. Anything stinks, but whales have very fishy breath.
Yes.
And when they fart, yes. Whales fart, and whale farts smell like rotting fish, and your lolly is going, yes, yes.
We've been on whale.
We've been on whale, but we've been on whale watching tours where you go out and you watch the whales, and yeah, sometimes they'll fart underneath the boat, and it's foul. It's foul. It's not the worst thing that I've smelled. It's probably somewhere in the top 10. Maybe 20, but it's pretty bad. But when there aren't burping and farting at you, whales don't smell that bad. Or rotting. Yeah, rotting things are right up there, probably number 1 through 5 of worst things I've smelled.